At my son's wedding, his bride looked me straight in the eyes and said, "Could you clean this up before the real guests arrive?" Then she handed me a dirty champagne glass. I stared at the glass in my hand. For a second, I honestly thought she was joking. She wasn't. Behind her, 2 bridesmaids covered their mouths, trying to hide their laughter. And my son, my only son, stood less than 10 feet away. He saw everything. Our eyes met. I waited for him to say something. Anything. "That's my mother. Don't speak to her like that." Even a simple, "Claire, stop." But Daniel looked away. He actually looked away. Claire adjusted the diamond bracelet on her wrist and sighed impatiently. "Also, the women's restroom on this floor is a mess," she said. "Someone should really tell the staff." One of her bridesmaids laughed. "Claire, leave her alone. She's probably busy." Claire smiled. "Oh, I'm sure she is." They walked away. Their heels clicked against the marble floor as they disappeared into the ballroom. I was still standing there, holding that dirty glass. My name is Margaret Bennett. I'm 58 years old. And the woman who had just mistaken me for a maid was about to marry my son. But that wasn't the part that made the situation almost funny. You see, Claire didn't know something. Neither did her bridesmaids. And apparently, my son had never bothered to tell her. The marble floor beneath her designer shoes, the crystal chandeliers hanging above her wedding tables, the ballroom where 300 guests were about to celebrate, the bridal suite where she'd spent the morning drinking champagne, even the chair where she would sit beside my son as his wife. All of it was mine. I owned the venue. And before that night was over, Claire was going to learn exactly who I was. But to understand how my own son allowed his future wife to humiliate me, I have to take you back 3 years. Back to the day Daniel first brought Claire home. Daniel had always been a gentle boy. At least, that's how I remembered him. His father, Robert, died when Daniel was 11. A heart attack. Sudden. No warning. One morning, Robert kissed me before leaving for work. That evening, I was sitting in a hospital hallway while a doctor explained that my husband was gone. Daniel didn't cry at the funeral. He stood beside me in a black suit that was slightly too big for him and held my hand. When we got home, he finally asked me one question. "Mom, who's gonna take care of us now?" I pulled him against me. "I am." And I meant it. The truth was, I had no idea how. Robert had handled most of our finances. We weren't poor, but we weren't wealthy either. We had a mortgage, bills, Daniel's school fees, and suddenly, one income had disappeared. I worked as an event coordinator at a small hotel. The pay wasn't great, but I knew weddings. I knew what nervous brides needed before they asked. I knew how to calm angry fathers. I knew which caterers were reliable and which photographers disappeared after taking deposits. Most importantly, I knew people. So I started small. Birthday parties, anniversaries, corporate dinners. I worked during the day and planned events at night. Sometimes Daniel would fall asleep at the kitchen table while I answered client emails. I'd carry him to bed, then go back downstairs and work until 2 in the morning. For 6 years, I barely slept. Then one of my clients, a property investor named Harold Green, made me an offer. He owned an abandoned estate outside the city. Beautiful property. Terrible condition. He wanted to sell it. I saw something else. I saw weddings. Harold laughed when I told him. "Margaret, the roof leaks." "I know." "The kitchen hasn't worked in 15 years. "I know." "The West Ballroom has pigeons." "We'll remove the pigeons." He stared at me. Then he smiled. "You're serious." I was. I invested every dollar Robert had left me. I took out loans. I sold our larger house and moved Daniel and myself into a 2-bedroom apartment. People thought I had lost my mind. Maybe I had. But 2 years later, Bennett House opened. Our first wedding had 47 guests. Our second had 90. Within 5 years, we had a waiting list. Then we added another ballroom, a garden pavilion, 12 luxury guest suites. By the time Daniel graduated from college, Bennett House had become one of the most exclusive wedding venues in the state. But I never lived like a wealthy woman. I drove the same gray car for 9 years. I bought clothes when I needed them. I still made my own coffee. Money had never impressed me. Maybe that was my mistake. Because I raised a son who eventually became embarrassed by the very simplicity that had paid for his entire life. Daniel met Claire when he was 28. He called me one Sunday afternoon. "Mom, I want you to meet someone." There was something different in his voice. I smiled. "Is she important?" He laughed. "Maybe." They came for dinner the following Friday. Claire was beautiful. There was no denying it. Long blonde hair, perfect makeup, a cream-colored dress that probably cost more than my first car. She walked into my home, looked around, and smiled. "This is cozy." I should have noticed the pause, but I didn't. I hugged her. "It's wonderful to finally meet you." "You too, Mrs. Bennett." "Margaret, please." During dinner, Claire asked me what I did. "I work in events." That was my usual answer. I never introduced myself as a business owner. I hated watching people's behavior change when they learned about money, and Claire nodded as if my answer confirmed something. "Oh, like wedding planning?" "Something like that. That must be stressful." "It can be." She took a sip of wine. "My mother always says service jobs require a special personality." I looked at Daniel. He was focused on his food. "What kind of personality is that?" I asked. Claire smiled. "Patient," I smiled back. "Very." The rest of dinner was pleasant enough. Claire talked about her family. Her father, Richard, owned several car dealerships. Her mother, Patricia, organized charity events. Claire had attended private schools her entire life. She worked in public relations for her father's company. Or, as I later discovered, she occasionally posted photographs on the company's social media page. But Daniel adored her, and I wanted to like her, so I ignored the little things. The way Claire never helped clear the table, the way she left her wine glass on my bookshelf, the way she asked Daniel while I was standing in the room, "Did you really grow up here?" I ignored all of it. 6 months later, Daniel proposed. He called me immediately. She said yes! I was happy for him. Truly. Then Claire took the phone. "Margaret, we're getting married!" I heard. "Congratulations." "And I already know exactly where." I smiled. "Do you?" "Bennett House." I nearly laughed. "You like Bennett House?" "Like it?" "Margaret, it's impossible to book. My friend Sophie tried getting a Saturday date and they told her the waiting list was almost 2 years. "That sounds inconvenient." Claire laughed. "You don't understand. It's the venue." I looked across my office at the framed photograph of Robert sitting on my bookshelf. "Oh," I said. "I think I understand." Then Daniel came back onto the phone. "Mom, can I ask you something?" "Of course. Do you still know people in the wedding business?" I leaned back in my chair. "A few. Could you maybe help us get Bennett House?" I stayed quiet. Daniel continued. "Claire really wants it." In that moment, I had a choice. I could tell them. I could say, "Daniel, Bennett House belongs to me." But something stopped me. Maybe curiosity. Maybe instinct. "Let me make a phone call," I said. 2 days later, I called Daniel. "I got you the venue." He screamed so loudly I had to move the phone away from my ear. Claire called me 5 minutes later. "Oh my God, Margaret, how did you do that?" "I told you. I know people. You are a lifesaver." For the first time, Claire sounded genuinely excited to speak with me. That should have told me everything. But the worst was still coming. The wedding planning started immediately. Claire wanted 300 guests, imported flowers, a 7-tier cake, a string quartet, custom table linens, and ice sculpture. At one meeting, she changed the entire dinner menu because she suddenly decided salmon was too middle class. I sat quietly beside Daniel. The venue's general manager, Rebecca, kept glancing at me. Rebecca had worked for me for 11 years. She knew exactly who I was. But before the first meeting, I'd asked her not to say anything. "Treat me like the groom's mother," I told her. Rebecca frowned. "You are the groom's mother. You know what I mean?" She didn't like it, but she respected my decision. Claire, meanwhile, treated Rebecca wonderfully. "Rebecca, you are amazing. Rebecca, you're saving my life. Rebecca, I don't know how you deal with difficult people." Then she'd turn to me. "Margaret, could you move your bag? The designer needs that chair." At first, I laughed it off. Then came the dress shopping. Claire invited me. At least, I thought she invited me. When I arrived at the boutique, Claire was standing with Patricia and 4 bridesmaids. Patricia looked surprised. Margaret. Hello, Patricia. Claire turned around. Oh, you came. I stopped. You sent me the address. Yes, but I thought you might be working. There was that word again. Working. I moved some things around. Claire forced a smile. Well, great. For the next 2 hours, I sat in the corner. Every time Claire walked out in a dress, her mother cried. Her friends screamed. I smiled. I complimented her. Then she found the dress, a beautiful ivory gown. Claire stood in front of the mirror. Even I felt emotional. You look beautiful, I said. Claire met my eyes in the mirror. Thank you. Then the consultant asked, and what will the mother of the groom be wearing? Claire answered before I could. Something simple. The consultant looked at me. Do you have a color in mind? I opened my mouth. Claire interrupted again. Nothing too bright. We don't want her standing out in photographs. The room went quiet. Patricia pretended to examine the dress. I felt my cheeks become warm. I wasn't planning to compete with the bride, I said. Claire laughed. Oh, Margaret, I didn't mean it like that. But she did. We both knew she did. That evening, Daniel called me. Mom, Claire said you seemed upset today. I sat on my couch. Did she? She thinks you don't like her. I almost laughed. Daniel, she told a room full of people that I shouldn't stand out in your wedding photographs. She was talking about colors. No, Daniel, he sighed. Mom, please, that word. Please. Not, are you okay? Not, I'll speak to her. Just, please. As if my feelings were another problem on his wedding checklist. I don't want drama, he said. Neither do I. Then can you just try with Claire? I stared at the wall. I have been trying. I know. Just try harder. When the call ended, I sat there for a long time. I thought about the 11-year-old boy who once held my hand at his father's funeral. I wondered when he'd learn to let go. 2 weeks before the wedding, Claire called me. She needed help with guest welcome bags. I arrived at Bennett House at 8 in the morning. There were 300 bags, candles, miniature champagne bottles, handwritten cards, custom chocolates. Claire was supposed to meet me. She never came. At noon, I called her. Where are you? Oh my God. Margaret, I completely forgot. You forgot? I'm at lunch with the girls. I looked at the hundreds of boxes around me. Claire, you asked me to come. I know. I'm so sorry. She paused. Then she said, but you're so good at this stuff. I didn't answer. You work events, she continued. This is probably easy for you. There it was. The truth. She hadn't invited me to be part of the wedding. She'd recruited free labor. I hung up. Rebecca walked into the room a few minutes later. She looked at the boxes, then at me. Margaret, don't. You need to tell Daniel. He's happy. Is he? That question stayed with me. The night before the wedding, Bennett House was glowing. Lights wrapped around the garden trees. White flowers filled the ballroom. The staff had spent 4 days preparing. I walked through the venue at 11 that night, alone. I always did that before a major wedding. It was my ritual. I checked the tables, the kitchen, the garden. Then I entered the ballroom. 300 chairs faced the dance floor. At the center was a long table for the wedding party. I found Daniel's seat, then Claire's. I placed my hand on the back of my son's chair. Your father should be here, I whispered. My voice broke. For months, I had tolerated Claire. Not because I was weak, not because I didn't see what she was doing. I tolerated her because Daniel had already lost one parent. I didn't want him to feel like he had to choose between his mother and his future wife. But somewhere along the way, Daniel had made a choice anyway. And it wasn't me. The wedding morning arrived. At 6:30, I was already at the venue. A catering truck had been delayed. One florist was missing. The lighting company had installed the wrong bulbs in the garden pavilion. Normal wedding problems. I changed into my dress at 10. Dark blue. Simple. Elegant. Exactly what Claire requested. When I entered the bridal floor, I heard laughter from Claire's suite. I knocked. A bridesmaid opened the door. Oh, she looked me up and down. Hi, hello, I stepped inside. Claire was sitting in front of a mirror. Her makeup artist was working on her face. Patricia was drinking champagne. No one offered me a glass. Margaret, Claire said, you're early. The ceremony starts in 3 hours. I know. I handed her a small box. I wanted to give you this. Claire looked at it. What is it? Open it. Inside was a pearl necklace. It had belonged to my mother. I wore it at my wedding. I had imagined giving it to Daniel's wife one day. Claire lifted the necklace. Oh, my heart sank. It's been in my family for 70 years, I explained. Patricia leaned closer. Vintage? Yes. Claire smiled politely. That's sweet. She placed it back in the box. I already have jewelry for today. I understand. Maybe another time. I took the box. Of course. As I turned to leave, one bridesmaid whispered something. I didn't hear all of it. Only 4 words, probably from a flea market. Then they laughed. I walked out, and 20 minutes later, Claire handed me the dirty champagne glass. Could you clean this up before the real guests arrive? That was the moment something inside me changed. Not broke, changed. Because when I looked at Daniel and watched him turn his face away, I finally understood. Silence is also a choice. My son had chosen silence, so I made a choice too. I walked downstairs. Rebecca was standing near the ballroom entrance. She saw my face. What happened? I handed her the champagne glass. Claire thinks I'm staff. Rebecca stared at me. What? Apparently, the restroom also needs attention. Rebecca's face became red. I am ending this wedding. Despite everything, I laughed. No, Margaret, no. The wedding continues. Rebecca crossed her arms. Why? I looked toward the ballroom. Because we have 300 guests. That has never stopped me before. I smiled. I know. Then I lowered my voice. But I need you to do something. Rebecca listened. Her expression slowly changed. Are you sure? Completely. For the next 2 hours, I said nothing. The ceremony was beautiful. Daniel stood beneath an arch covered in white roses. When he saw Claire walking down the aisle, he cried. I cried too, because no matter how angry I was, he was still my son. For a moment, I saw the little boy again, the boy who used to leave drawings on my pillow, the teenager who called me after his first heartbreak, the college student who drove 4 hours home because I had the flu. I wondered if that Daniel was still inside him. Maybe he was. Maybe Claire had changed him. Or maybe I was finally seeing parts of my son I had ignored. They exchanged vows. They kissed. Everyone applauded. And then the reception began. Claire entered the ballroom like a queen. She had changed into a second dress. The band announced them. Guests stood. Champagne flowed. Dinner was served. I sat at table 12. Not the family table. Table 12. With 2 of Daniel's former coworkers, an elderly neighbor, and 3 people I had never met. When I'd seen the seating chart weeks earlier, I asked Daniel about it. Why am I at table 12? He looked uncomfortable. Claire's parents are hosting the reception. I stared at him. The reception at my. I stopped myself. He didn't notice. Her family needs the main tables, he continued. I'm your mother. I know. Your only living parent. Mom. There it was again, that warning tone. Mom, don't make this difficult. So I sat at table 12. During dinner, Patricia gave a speech. She talked about Claire's childhood, her education, her beauty. Then she welcomed Daniel into their family. Richard spoke next. He joked about the cost of the wedding. If Daniel ever divorces my daughter, I'll personally send him the invoice. Everyone laughed. I didn't. Then Richard raised his glass. To family. The room repeated. To family. No one mentioned me. No one mentioned Robert. No one mentioned the woman sitting at table 12 who had raised the groom alone. Then the master of ceremonies walked toward the microphone. My phone vibrated. A message from Rebecca. Ready. I looked toward the back of the ballroom. Rebecca was standing there. I typed one word. Proceed. The master of ceremonies smiled. Ladies and gentlemen, Before our next speech, Bennett House would like to present a special message. Claire looked confused. Daniel turned toward the screen. The lights dimmed. A large projection appeared behind the dance floor, the Bennett House logo. Then photographs began appearing. The old estate, broken windows, damaged walls, the ruined ballroom. Guests whispered. A video narrator began speaking. 20 years ago, Bennett House was an abandoned property with an uncertain future. The photographs changed. Workers repairing walls, new windows, the garden being planted. Then, a photograph of me, 38 years old, covered in dust, standing in the unfinished ballroom. Claire stopped smiling. The narrator continued. One woman's vision transformed an abandoned estate into a place where thousands of families would begin new chapters. Another photograph. Me holding blueprints. Another. Me opening the front doors on our first day. Then the words appeared. Margaret Bennett. Funder and unner. The room became completely silent. I looked at Claire. Her face had lost all color. Patricia slowly lowered her champagne glass. Richard stared at the screen. And Daniel looked at me. For the first time that entire day, my son truly looked at me. The video ended. The lights came back on. Rebecca walked onto the stage. On behalf of the entire Bennett House team, we'd like to recognize our founder, Mrs. Margaret Bennett. The staff standing around the ballroom began applauding. Then guests joined. People stood. Within seconds, the entire room was giving me a standing ovation. I didn't ask for it. I hadn't planned that part. I looked at Rebecca. She was crying. I stood. Claire stared at me. I walked toward the stage. As I passed the head table, Claire whispered, "You own this place?" I stopped for 1 second. Then I looked at her. Yes, her lips parted. "But you said you worked in events." "I do." I continued walking. Rebecca handed me the microphone. 300 people watched me. Daniel looked terrified. Claire looked humiliated. And suddenly, I had more power than I wanted. I could destroy her. I could tell everyone about the champagne glass, the restroom, the dress shopping, the welcome bags. I could make 300 people laugh at her. For one brief moment, I wanted to. Then I thought about Robert, and I knew exactly what he would say. Don't become cruel just because someone gave you permission. So I smiled. Thank you. My voice echoed through the ballroom. Some of you may be wondering why the owner of Bennett House was sitting at table 12. A few nervous laughs moved through the room. Daniel closed his eyes. I was wondering the same thing. More laughter. Even I smiled. But tonight isn't about business. I looked at Daniel. It's about family. He couldn't meet my eyes. I built Bennett House after my husband died. At the time, my son was 11 years old. The screen behind me showed a photograph of young Daniel. Daniel once asked me who would take care of us. My voice trembled. I told him I would. Daniel began crying, and I tried. The room was silent. I wasn't always perfect. I missed school events. I worked late. I burned more dinners than I successfully cooked. People laughed softly. But every decision I made was for the boy standing in this room tonight. I looked at Claire. And when someone loves your child, you want to believe they will protect their heart. Claire's eyes filled with tears. I continued. Marriage is not about expensive flowers. I glanced around the ballroom. Or chandeliers. Then I smiled. Even very beautiful chandeliers. The guests laughed. Marriage is about what you do when the person beside you is uncomfortable. Daniel looked at me. It's about speaking when silence would be easier. His face collapsed. He understood. Finally. And it's about remembering that how we treat people when we believe they have nothing to offer us says more about our character than any speech ever could. Claire lowered her head. No one laughed. No one moved. I placed the microphone back on the stand. To Daniel and Claire, I raised my glass. May you both become the people you promised each other you already are. I walked off the stage. The applause was quieter this time. Not because people disliked the speech, because they understood it. I returned to table 12. But before I reached my chair, Daniel grabbed my arm. Mom! I stopped. His face was wet with tears. Can we talk? It's your wedding. Please. We walked into the garden. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Then Daniel said, I didn't know. I looked at him. Didn't know what? That Claire treated you like that? I almost smiled. You watched her hand me a dirty glass. He looked down. I thought, you thought what? I thought there was a misunderstanding. Then why didn't you ask? Silence. I nodded. Exactly. Mom, I'm sorry. Are you? Yes. Or are you embarrassed because 300 people just learned your mother owns the building? His face changed. That isn't fair. No, Daniel. My voice remained calm. Table 12 wasn't fair. He looked away. Claire planned the seating, and you approved it. I didn't check every table. You knew I wasn't sitting with you. He had no answer. I continued. I sold our home for this place. Mom. I worked 18-hour days. I know. No, you don't. My voice finally broke. You don't know because I made sure you never had to know. Daniel started crying again. I wanted you to have a normal childhood. I wiped my eyes. I wanted you to grow up without feeling responsible for me. I never asked you to do all that. The words came out quickly. The second he said them, he regretted them. I stared at him. He covered his mouth. Mom, I didn't mean. Yes, you did. No, you did. I nodded slowly. And maybe that's something I needed to hear. I turned away. He grabbed my hand. Mom, please. I pulled my hand free. Go back to your wife. Then I walked inside. I didn't see Claire for the next hour. I assumed she was avoiding me. I was wrong. She found me in my office. I was removing my earrings when someone knocked. Come in, Claire entered, still wearing her wedding dress. Her eyes were red. Can I sit? I gestured toward the chair. She sat. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then Claire said, I didn't know you owned Bennett House. I gathered that. She flinched. I deserve that. I waited. Claire looked at her hands. My mother told me Daniel came from a different background. I frowned. A different background? She thought. Claire stopped. Say it. She thought your family didn't have money. I leaned back. And that made it acceptable to treat me badly? No, but you did. Claire started crying. I know. I didn't comfort her. Not this time. She continued. My entire life, my parents taught me that people either help you move forward or hold you back. That sounds lonely. It is. Her answer surprised me. Claire looked around my office. When I met Daniel, I loved that he wasn't like my family. Then why did you spend 3 years turning him into them? She froze. I hadn't planned to say it, but once the words were out, I didn't regret them. Claire wiped her face. I think I was scared. Of me? Of what you meant to him. I stared at her. He talked about you constantly when we first met. A sad smile appeared on her face. Mom did this. Mom taught me that. Mom always says. She looked down. I felt like I was competing with you. You were competing with a mother? I know how stupid that sounds. It doesn't sound stupid. She looked at me hopefully. It sounds unhealthy. Her hope disappeared. I gave you my mother's pearls today, I said. Claire began crying harder. I know. You laughed at them. I didn't. Your friends did. I should have stopped them. Yes, she nodded. Yes, I should have. I walked to my desk. The small jewelry box was sitting beside my purse. I picked it up. My mother wore these for 36 years. Claire watched me. I wore them when I married Robert. I opened the box, and I kept them because I wanted to give them to my son's wife. Claire covered her mouth. I am so sorry. I believe you. She looked surprised. But being sorry doesn't erase behavior. I know. No, I don't think you do. I closed the box. Because you've spent your entire life believing apologies are payment. Claire stared at me. They aren't, I continued. They're promises. Promises? A real apology is a promise that someone will meet a different version of you next time. Claire was silent. Then she nodded. I understand. I hope so. She stood. At the door, she stopped. Margaret? Yes? The champagne glass. I waited. I knew you weren't staff. My stomach tightened. Claire began crying again. I was angry because Daniel had asked me that morning if you'd arrived. She swallowed. And I wanted to embarrass you. There it was, the complete truth. It hurt more than the lie would have. Thank you for telling me, I said. Do you hate me? I thought about the question. No, Claire wiped her face. But I don't trust you, she nodded. I understand. Trust can be rebuilt. She looked at me. But I won't build it for you. Claire left. The reception ended at midnight. I stood near the entrance as guests departed. Some hugged me. Some complimented Bennett House. Several people suddenly wanted my business card. Funny how quickly people become interested in you after learning what you own. At 12:30, Daniel and Claire left. Daniel hugged me. I didn't pull away, but I didn't hold him as tightly as I used to. Claire stood beside the car. Before getting inside, she looked at me. Good night, Margaret. Good night, Claire. 3 weeks passed. Daniel called me every day. I answered twice. I needed space. Then one Saturday morning, my doorbell rang. It was Claire. No makeup. Jeans. A simple sweater. She was holding a cardboard box. What are you doing here? I brought coffee. I looked at the box. That's a very large coffee. She smiled nervously. It's not coffee. She opened it. 300 small candles. I stared at her. Welcome bags, she said. I almost laughed. Claire, I know the wedding is over. Usually how weddings work. She smiled. I called Rebecca. My smile disappeared. You called my general manager? I asked if Bennett House had any upcoming charity events. I crossed my arms. And? She said you're hosting a dinner for 200 foster families next month. I nodded. I want to help. Why? Claire looked at me. Because I owe you. No. She seemed confused. You don't get to help because you owe me. But if you want punishment, talk to a priest. She almost smiled. If you want my trust, show me who you are. Claire looked at the candles, then back at me. I want to help. I stepped aside. Come in. Claire spent 6 hours at my dining table. We prepared gift bags. She didn't complain. She didn't take photographs. She didn't post anything online. The following weekend, she came back. Then again, Daniel eventually joined us. Things didn't magically become perfect. This isn't that kind of story. Claire and I argued. A lot. She still had moments when entitlement slipped into her voice. And every time I looked at her, she'd stop. I'm doing it again, aren't I? Yes. Sorry. Promise. She'd correct herself. Daniel changed too. One evening, 6 months after the wedding, we were having dinner at a restaurant. The waiter accidentally spilled water near Claire. Patricia, who was dining with us, snapped.